The story begins with the past. The main character tells about his life, where he was reborn in a fantasy world. He looked forward with surprise on his face. In the room in which he was reborn, there is a lamp with old candles, instead of LEDs, and the cozy ceiling is illuminated by their light. A fantasy world that remained from the earthly civilization. The house in which Leon Dragonia was reborn is considered rich. This is not a bad reincarnation for an orphan who died from overwork during hard work. He thought that there is another reason why he considers this the house of the rich. The biological mother of this incarnation was very beautiful. His mother, with a smile on her face and drops of tears in her eyes, calls Leon her child. He thought that fortunately, in the future he will not have problems on the love front. In the 3rd year of his life, Leon saw the world outside the window, beyond his cradle. He stands on a chair and puts his hands on the window. Leon, with a smile on his face, looked at the illuminating rays of the sun. He saw many houses and alleys through the window and said that it really was a completely different world. Considering that Leon was still small, the world outside the cradle was huge. The nanny came to the door and looked ahead, loudly calling the young master. Leon thought that his adventures were quickly over. The nanny, with beads of sweat on her face, holds the protagonist in her arms, taking him away from the window, and stepping back said that it was dangerous. The Archduchess could do something to her. He thought that, as it turned out, his family was the Grand Duchy of this kingdom. Leon, with a drop of sweat on his face, looked up and asked the nanny for forgiveness. He is the legitimate son of the Grand Duke of Dragonia, in the kingdom of Lionheart, the so-called young Grand Duke. In the 8th year of life, Leon, holding a dagger in his hands, loudly marvels at its beauty. At this time, he began to study fencing, as a future knight of the kingdom. He uses something like a sword and aura, and the one who trains him, sent from the royal palace, the holy knight Sir Gordic. Wulfric Dragonia looked at Leon with a smile on his face and put his hand on his head. Gordic, with a smirk on his face, said that it must be the will of the goddess. It was an honor for him to train him, and he was glad to meet him. Leon wondered, is he really a holy knight? He said loudly with a smile on his face that he was also glad to meet him. Leon wondered, well, what is this? In his 14th year of life, he pulled the bag on his back with his hands with an exhausted look, and said loudly that this freak Gordic would make a real mockery of children. Holy knights were truly monsters in human skin, and it was very difficult to achieve this title. Gordic looked at Leon with shaking legs dragging a huge stone and said that in addition to that, he got another lap. Leon thought that first, through training and completing quests, becoming a knight of the kingdom, one must accumulate experience and glory. He holds the sword in his hand with a confident face, striking at the defending Gordic. Leon thought that then one must be chosen by the Holy Grail and drink the holy water. He holds the sword in his hand with a determined look, attacking it again with great force, from which stones fly aside. Leon thought that in addition, as the heir of Dragoni, he had to learn everything necessary to become a Grand Duke. Gordic strikes him with great force, and with smoke spreading around them, he told him to look at his opponent until the end. Leon thought that first the lessons of the heir of the Grand Dukedom, before the lessons of the Holy Knight. If God really exists, then he would like to pray for him to spare him. Leon lies on the ground with a tired look and his mouth wide open, holding a broken sword in his shaking hand. He thought that although he does not believe in something like religion, in his 16th year of life, Leon walks through the puddles under the night sky. He confidently looked ahead, clutching his cloak in his hand, and said that it was definitely somewhere around here. Leon thought that he wandered around the world to gain the recognition of the goddess, to become a holy knight, and receive quests. He looked at the illuminated area behind the foliage with a surprised face from which a strong black smoke was emanating. Leon wondered how to gain the recognition of the goddess? In the village engulfed in flames, people loudly said that the orcs were advancing more and more, and they loudly asked to save them. He thought that if he diligently accumulated fame and good deeds, then she would come to give a quest. The man looked at the green orc standing in the smoke and loudly said to Sir Gildas that there were too many orcs, and this was the end. Leon thought that he had many opportunities to use his sword, so he was worried. The protagonist looked at the orc who turned to him and loudly said that they were freaks. Leon asked loudly how dare they trample the land of the kingdom with their dirty feet. He with determination on his face and with great force hits them with his sword. Leon thought that the kingdom had many enemies. In his 20th year of life, he looked forward with a surprised look and thought that he met a goddess. The goddess Ariana looked down with her arms crossed and told Wulfric's son, Leon, that she was giving him a task to prove his honor and faith. Leon thought that this was not a joke, and she was really a goddess. He knelt down on one knee and standing above Ariana floating in the sky said loudly that he accepted her order. Leon thought that the goddess really existed. After long battles, he became a holy knight. Leon with calmness on his face stands on one knee leaning on his sword. The protagonist thought that after that he continued to fight, he cut orcs, destroyed goblins and eradicated the evil cult. Eventually, he became a military knight of the kingdom, which gave him the right to summon other knights. Leon looked at the bright light emitted in front of him, while standing among the many dead orcs lying on the ground. Leon thought that he had killed 700,000 orcs, including women and children. The protagonist, with a smile on his face and many wounds, looked at the sun and thought that they were damned freaks. Leon felt so alive after these battles. In his 35th year of life, the true saint and demigod, Argent Majesty Leonhardt, passed away. This happened while he was fighting a great demon summoned by the Empire. The orcs were already a headache, and now the demons were rampaging, which is why humanity must believe in the gods and serve them with faith. Leon confidently strides forward in front of the pallbearing saints. He looked forward with a determined look and thought that they were freaks of the Empire's magicians. In addition, a holy knight must be elected to replace King Leonhardt, who passed away with honor. In the middle of all this chaos, people bowed to greet the goddess Ariana who appeared. She was covered in light, spread her arms out to the sides and hovered in the center of the church in front of Leon, saying that her loyal knight would inherit the symbol of honor and belief. He thought that the goddess had come down and pointed at him. Leon bowed and looking down under the glow, Ariana agreed with her. He thought that it was an honorable path and a hard place, but he could not disappoint the knights and people of his kingdom who followed him. Leon transplanted the sacred treasure he received from the goddess, the lion's heart, to himself and swore to protect the Holy Grail. He placed his hands on the crown on his head. Leon thought that he, being the great Duke of Dragonia, became the king of the kingdom of Lionheart. He, with a tired face with falling light petals behind him, removes his hands from the crown on his head. In his 80th year of life, a lot has happened during this time. Leon rides forward at the orcs while sitting on stallion and holding a sword in his hand. He thought that there were 3 great wars with the orcs, and some strange goblin evolved into a great demon. The Empire kept causing terrible trouble. The knight behind Leon called out to his majesty and said that people were saying that the Empire's dark magic faction was conducting experiments. Leon looked forward with a serious face and said nothing and thought that this was all because the Empire had accepted the northern pagan freaks into their ranks. They were trying to be independent from God. He looked forward with a tired expression and told them to gather the knights. Leon thought that this is what happens when you give rights to people who are not even worthy of being slaves. It would be better to conquer them all. In the 90th year, the Empire's freaks finally did some damage. The old man stands in front of the broken statue and said something in his own language. He folded his hands in front of his chest and said loudly that he offered them 3 million sacrifices and asked them to listen to his request. Leon thought that the Emperor's freak had crossed the line. The freak who sang that he did not want to die committed suicide with 3 million citizens of the Empire. The Lord of Chaos was summoned to the capital and eventually, Leon gathered all the knights and took the holy sword, which was still wet with the blood of the orcs killed last year. He quickly walked to the open door and told them to go to the Empire. In the 121st year of life, he did everything he could, but contrary to his wishes, the world fell apart. Leon holds a battered doll in his hand and thought that he tried to defeat evil with all the gods of this world, but could not stop it. Aaron stands behind Leon who is kneeling and calls him. He said without turning around that he can be proud of this. His father died with dignity and went to the world of gods. Aaron quickly looked at him with a tired look and agreed with him. Leon turned to the side and clutching a doll in his hand said that all the troops should look forward. He thought that the goddess should look. Here her young knights are trembling with fear. Leon, looking at the army of knights, asked if she hears the sounds of demons scattered across the land. He thought that women are calming children, swallowing tears. The younger generation is trying to hold in their hands the dying flame of resistance, and the knights are trying to plant seeds of hope in the wasteland soaked in blood. Leon asked, having taken their brothers, does she hear the voices of the villains who took their loved ones? He thought that the owner of the holy sword, the holy spear, and the holy grail. Leon, with a confident look sitting on the stallion clenching his hand into a fist, asked if they heard the sounds of evil trying to crush them. He, with fury on his face, loudly told them to be angry, endlessly angry. Angry at these impudent fools who fell into the illusion of victory. Leon thought that her first night, he knows that he cannot stop the evil that stretches beyond the horizon. Leon loudly told the knights not to forget, as long as they do not lose their honor, they will never lose. He with confidence on his face holds the sword in his hand appearing from the portal and wondered what this knight should do. Leon with a determined look gallops towards the stallion holding the weapon in his hand and said that it is in the name of the goddess. Ariana told her knight, her noble knight, that his goddess will be with him until the end. Leon with beads of sweat on his face said that it was for their honor, for Lionheart. He said loudly with a menacing look for them to go forward and attack. He thought that winter they had a decisive battle with tens of thousands of demons that had filled the land. The barbarian slaves were used as living shields, the warriors of freedom armed with spears and shields, and the knights of glory left with honor. And only the chosen one of all the gods, he was the only one who stayed until the very end and killed the demons. He cut down hundreds of demons and great demons. Showed them the superiority of the Holy Grail Knight. In the year 217, the winter was still not over. From the year 234 to the year 256, Leon destroyed the last remaining demon gates and now they have nowhere to run. He turned towards the demons with a terrifying look and a yellow aura in his eyes and said loudly that they were pathetic and despicable evil. Now they are freaks locked in this world with him. Now he will destroy them all to the last one. The monsters with horror on their faces and beads of sweat running down looked forward quickly. Leon thought that it was not he who was trapped, but they who were locked where he was. Leon with a terrifying grin with great power hit the demons with his sword, cutting them down. The year 300, a huge skeleton with a red aura to his eyes screams loudly in pain. Leader Kim Jinsu loudly asked if Hari was okay. The people stood and looked at the huge dead monster lying on the ground and asked what was this. They stood near the blue gate and loudly said that it was possible to kill the great demon with only a sword. The head of the great demon with an open mouth and black blood flowing from his eyes lay on the ground. Leon with a bloody face said for the brave men to get up, now is not the time to rest, they must get up and fight. The deputy of the Korean Hunters Association, Han Hari, looked forward quickly with a surprised expression and asked who he was. Leon, who was enveloped in a fiery aura, held a sword in his hand and approached the demon and said that he was King Lionheart. He said with a calm face that he was the king of valiant knights and a man who carried out God's will. Leon turned towards them with his naked body and said that he was Leon Dragonia Lionheart. Hari looked at him with an amazed expression. It was exactly the 300th year when he met the Earthlings. The system window notified that all the demons had been defeated, and there were 0 remaining demons. The Night King had finally returned. At present, a gate had opened in the center of Seoul. The gate level, black, could not be measured. The Korean Hunters Association and the World Hunters Association asked the major guilds to intervene in this matter. But they all refused because the difficulty level could not be determined. Hari raised her hand with a surprised expression and looked forward. In the end, the government ordered the Korean Association to go first, which was tantamount to suicide. The association looked at the blue portal in the sky with surprise. She remembered Leon's naked body and wondered what she had encountered. Hari looked forward with a surprised expression and a dirty face, and thought that it was a naked body. Jinsu called out to her through her memories. Hari looked at the red portal in the sky and the corpses of the monsters lying there. She came out of her memories with a surprised expression and made a loud sound. Jinsu extended his hand holding a cup towards her and asked, "Is she tired?" She stuttered and agreed with him, and thanked him loudly. He sat on a chair with an interested expression and turned towards her and asked, "So what was there?" Hari put her hands on her legs and said that everyone found it hard to believe. Jinsu said that it was expected. It was a black level demon gate, behind which was a great demon. It was already a miracle that they survived without any support from the guilds, and even cleared everything, only thanks to one man. Leon crossed his arms with an arrogant look and looked ahead. Hari, with a surprised face, held a cup in her hands, looked at the glass and asked, "This is a survivor, right?" The one who remained alive behind the gate. Jinsu crossed his arms with a serious look and said that it was true, a survivor of the other world. Sometimes such cases happened, people who survived behind the gate. The gates that appeared all over the world over the past 30 years had common features. A world that was destroyed or was in the process of being destroyed, that was the common feature. Sometimes survivors came to Earth from the demon world. At the same time, they retained the incredible power that they had in the demon world. Therefore, the government tried its best to satisfy the needs of the survivors and prepared a plan to recruit them. Hari sat on a chair with a surprised face, put her hands on her knees and said that they should recruit him at all costs. That man is incredibly strong. Jinsu leaned his face on his hand with a tired look and said that she was right, they had to do it. Even A-rank hunters had to risk their lives against advanced-level demons. That guy cut down a great demon with one blow. A demon that even the best S-rank hunters feared. He didn't just throw a blow. Jinsu recalls the fight between Leon and the demon. A long beam of light flashes past the demon. He held a weapon in one hand and a shield in the other hand and looked at the fallen body of the demon. Jinsu came out of his memories and said that he completely suppressed him. He asked with a surprised face, right now, their biggest concern is the cultural difference, right? If Leon talked about himself in such a tone, then he must be some kind of king. Hari looked at the computer monitor where the events in the room with Leon were transmitted and said loudly that he understands them better than they think. Jinsu asked, where did she get that from? She looked up with an admiring look and remembered Leon's face, and said that that person was definitely, and she didn't have time to finish. Leon with a terrifying look said loudly that he was just a freak. He broke the glass with the force of his scream and blew away all the objects in the room watching him. Hari with horror on her face looked at the flying objects and thought that he broke the armor-piercing glass that even blocks monster attacks. He with an angry look enveloped in an aura clenched his palms into fists, and turning over the table next to him loudly said, how dare he denigrate the valiant name of Lionheart? Jinsu with a puzzled look asked Hari, did she also say that he was good? Leon with a menacing look pointed his finger towards the assistant's table. Hari with beads of sweat on her face asked, maybe this is a difference in culture? 15 minutes ago, a surveillance camera was recording what was happening in the room. He sat at the table with his arms crossed and looked down. Leon thought with a menacing look that this was unusual. Maybe it was supposed to be like this? He was an orphan who died at the age of 20 from overwork. Then he was reborn in another world, and for over 100 years he was a knight and the ruler of a kingdom. When demons invaded the world, he spent 200 years hunting them. So a gap of 300 years, fortunately. At least some faint memories remained. The assistant in the black suit looked at him with a smile on his face and told him to listen. He put his hand with a pen in it on the table and asked, isn't he Leon Dragonia Lionheart? Leon thought that even if that was the case, there was no need to reveal the fact that he was an earthling. Then a young 20-year-old orphan, doesn't a 300-year-old knight from the other world sound better? Leon looked at him with an arrogant expression, crossing his arms, and told him to call him Your Majesty. The assistant, with a puzzled expression and beads of sweat running down, quickly looked at him. He scratched the back of his head and said loudly that he agreed with him, or rather, with His Majesty. Leon thought that even if it was a bit of a stretch, it would do. Is he a good person? Or is the government just wary of survivors? The assistant, with beads of sweat on his face, said that by the way, that black gate, in other words, the world of His Majesty. He had contact with their hunters. And he was the one who defeated all those demons? Leon, with a calm face crossing his arms, said that it was exactly like that. Has he already forgotten? The assistant, with a puzzled look, holding a pen in his hand, asked what he meant. He, with a menacing look crossing his arms, said that it was necessary to call him. His Majesty destroyed all evil, and defended the honor of the knights. Therefore, he gives him an order, to be his temporary scribe. He will do him the honor of capturing this honorable event. The assistant, with surprise on his face, stutteringly agrees with him. He looked down, holding a pen in his hand, and felt the cultural difference between them. The assistant, writing down what was happening, heard Leon's voice. He looked up with an arrogant look and said that isn't there a certain etiquette on how to treat guests? The assistant, with an angry look, holding a phone in his hand, said that he was hungry, that is, he wanted to have lunch. They would prepare food for him right away. Leon, with a calm face, told him to reveal the information about this world to the king. He thought that it was necessary to know what happened on Earth after he disappeared. The assistant raised his glasses higher with his hand and said that this is how he will explain everything to him. He put his hands in front of him with a thoughtful look and said that the nightmare suddenly began 30 years ago. Gates opened all over the world, monsters and demons began to jump out of them. Then a series of emergencies followed. After a large number of victims, they realized that each gate had a theme and a clear task. The thing is, if you leave the gate unattended, the dungeon breaks through, and monsters break out onto the ground. He got up from the table with a smile on his face, and leaning his hand on it said that his dinner seemed ready. Leon put his finger on his chin with a thoughtful look and thought that this was a little different. Unlike his world, which was captured by demons, here each gate has a theme and a task. The assistant happily turned to His Majesty and loudly said that his food was ready. Leon looks at the seasoned thick broth that was boiled for a long time and the crispy kimchi with a surprised look. For someone who did hard physical labor on the land, xiaoliangtang was like food for the soul. The familiar taste was even more attractive. But Leon was trying his best to collect his drool. He turned his head to the assistant with a serious look and asked, "What kind of food is this?" The assistant turned to His Majesty and said that this dish is called xiaoliangtang. It is called food for the soul of the common people. Leon, with a furious look, slammed his fist on the dish and loudly called the assistant trash. How dare they slander the valiant name of Lionheart? How dare they offer the king the food of the commoners? So this is how much their kingdom called Korea honors a person from another kingdom? Leon Dragonia Lionheart, a king from another world, messenger of the gods, keeper of the Holy Grail, and wielder of the Holy Sword and Holy Spear. The assistant looked at the spoiled dish lying on the floor and said that it was not that at all. Leon loudly chased that freak out of the room. The Lord of Chaos Malius and the 23 great demons, the opponent of evil who destroyed millions of demons, the embodiment of 300 years of history, finally returned to Earth. When he returned and saw the Earth after 300 years, he thought that it was very bad here. All because there is no proper faith. Enlightening the stupid peasants is the duty of the royal family. Even after returning to Earth, he is still a night king. After some time, Leon holds a fork and knife in his hands and eats steak. Jinsu calmly asked Hari how he knew that chicken and jajangmyeon are food for mere mortals. She closed her eyes and said that fortunately he at least eats steak and red wine of 1993. Jinsu, with beads of sweat on his face, crossed his arms and told Hari that she should go first. She pointed at herself in bewilderment and said loudly that she did not know how to speak in a historical tone. Jinsu, remaining in the same pose, said that nevertheless, it seems that Leon has favor with her. She also said that he praised her and called her brave. At least he will not kick her out. Hari, remaining in the same pose, said that he only said that she was brave. After a while, Hari, with beads of sweat on her face, opened the door and, turning to His Majesty, said that she was terribly sorry that she interrupted his meal. Leon, with a serious look, wiped his mouth with a towel and, looking at her, said that she was that same swordswoman. She needed to sit down. Hari looked at him with a wide smile on her face. Jinsu watches her on the camera located in the room and sees that she puts her hand behind her back and shows a thumb. Hari sat at the table with a smile on her face and asked if he liked the food. Leon closed his eyes with his head slightly down and said that it was not bad. He felt the chef's diligence and graceful execution. He raised his head with his arms crossed and said that the reason why he had given them so much trouble was not because of the food. It was all because of the manners they had shown towards the king. When meeting a representative of another country, they should be treated with due respect. Doesn't this have to do with the prestige of their country? Hari looked at him with beads of sweat on her face and said that because of their meager knowledge, they had shown him disrespect. Leon remained in the same pose and asked, "Her name was Hari, right?" She looked down and agreed with him, telling him her full name. He said that he had listened to stories about this world. Demons also appear on Earth. Did he understand correctly? She placed her hands on her knees with a serious expression and said that it was so. Hari's mission was one thing, to get the Hunters Association to recruit him. She thought that at least they had to settle this man in their country. Perhaps, if His Majesty didn't mind, the Korean government would take care of him from now on. In the 21st century, the intelligence agent's job was to recruit survivors. Even if they had to promise great support, they couldn't let him go to other countries. Leon looked at her with a serious expression and said that in order to settle in this world, he had to have duties to go to the battlefield. If he was a noble knight, he had to fight. Hari looked at him with a smile on her face and said loudly that then he would join their Hunters Association. Leon crossed his arms with an angry expression and said loudly that a king couldn't fight under the flag of another kingdom. He would establish a new knight's troop in this world. Hari looked at the camera in the corner of the room with beads of sweat on her face. She had no choice but to nod. After some time, she came out of the room and asked Jinsu with a puzzled expression what the higher-ups were saying. He looked at her with a smile on his face, holding his hands in his pockets, and asked what else they could say. Give as much support as possible. It was already good that he had not left for another country or joined a large guild. Hari said with a tired expression that it was hard to even think that the association and the government should bow down to him. She looked forward with an enraged expression and said loudly that it was all because of the idiots from the large guilds who boasted of their money and power. Jinsu looked at her with beads of sweat on his face and remembered something, mentioning the Phoenix Guild. Suddenly, A red light came on in the room and an alarm sound was turned on. Jinsu took out his phone with a terrifying expression and looking at the screen read a warning about a breakthrough in the dungeon of the Konam Plain. He said loudly that if there was a dungeon breakthrough at the location of the granary, the production of food might be stopped due to the monsters. Hari asked in confusion, "Isn't the Phoenix Guild's S-rank hunter Li Yanwan there? There's no way he couldn't block the orange gate." Jinsu gritted his teeth with a serious expression and said loudly that he was sure those idiots had other plans. "We need to quickly go and stop the freaks from the Phoenix Guild." Leon looked at the door from which the sounds were coming with a serious expression. He could hear all the sounds coming from behind the door. Leon thought that something bad must have happened. He raised his hand filled with his energy up and thought that if a dungeon breakthrough occurs, the land becomes polluted and crops don't grow. As he thought, this place doesn't have what he needs. Leon looked at his hand with a calm expression and wondered if everything is okay. He remembers the blonde goddess named Demira. After some time at the Orange Gate, Jinsu turned to the hunter Yanwan and asked him how this even happened. He looked ahead with a sly grin on his face and asked, "Are they the people from the association? The leader of Jinsu and their new recruit Hari?" Jinsu gritted his teeth with a drop of sweat on his face and thought that those idiots deliberately provoked a dungeon breakthrough, just because they didn't respond to their demands. During this year, the Phoenix Guild has been constantly requesting an exemption from taxes on the income received inside the gate. They were getting a lot of income from the gate, especially from the magic crystals, materials, and monsters, and now they want to be exempt from paying the 1,000,000,000,000 tax. Jinsu remained in the same position and thought that they already had so many advantages for a large guild. It's hard to think that they would do something like this because their request was rejected. Hari put her hand on her chest with a serious expression and loudly told Hunter Yanwan that he needs to close the gate right now. It's already a week today, if more time passes. Before she could finish speaking, Yanwan interrupted her with a smile on his face and said that he knows everything. The ownership rights of the gate will be transferred. But what should they do? Their guild has suffered greatly. It seems that it will be difficult to attack in this state. Yanwan turned his head away from them, putting his hand in his pocket, and said that they will try their best until tomorrow, but he doesn't know what will come of it. Hari looked at him with an angry expression and asked if he really had no patriotism at all. Jinsu grabbed her shoulder and asked her to stop. She said loudly with the same expression on her face that Yanwang knew very well what would happen if the Honam Plains were polluted. He looked at her with a mad expression and asked, did she think he didn't know? Why was she acting childish? Didn't he tell Hari during last year's draft that justice in the world is money and power? Leon suddenly appeared with a serious expression and looked ahead and said that they were somehow vulgar and old-fashioned. Hari looked at him with a surprised expression and asked what His Majesty Leon was doing here. He said with a serious expression that she should not dare to call the king's name whenever she wanted. He only allows people to call him by his title. Yanwang looked at him with beads of sweat on his face and asked who he was. He looks like a European. Leon told him to shut his mouth with a serious expression. How dare such a low-class person talk to him? Yanwang gritted his teeth with beads of sweat on his face and wondered what was wrong with this idiot. Calling him low-class when he was one of the 20 S-ranked and the leader of a guild in the top 10? He swung his hand filled with energy with an enraged expression and asked Leon if he wanted to die. Hari asked Hunter Yanwang loudly in confusion to stop. He was one of the survivors. He looked ahead with beads of sweat on his face and asked if he was really a survivor. Yanwang stretched his hand forward with a smile on his face, bowed his head and introduced himself, and said that he was asking for his forgiveness. Could he really be from that black gate? Leon looked at him with a serious expression and said that the king does not repeat himself twice. He turned his head towards Hari and said that she needs to be told what the problem is. He doesn't know much about the gate, so she needs to explain it to him in as much detail as possible. Jinsu brought his clenched fists to his chest with a smile on his face and thought, is Leon really going to help? Hari looked at him with a smile on her face and said that she will tell him everything now. This is a dungeon breakthrough. When a dungeon breakthrough occurs, a huge number of monsters break out and pollute the land, and crops cannot grow on polluted land. The Honam Plain is an important place for growing grain, so the situation is critical. Right now, the demons that have spread are polluting the land. Leon looked at her with a serious expression and asked what is the way to solve this problem. Hari said loudly with a confident expression that the pollution needs to be cleaned up and the dungeon needs to be cleared as soon as possible, and the dungeon itself needs to be destroyed. He said that he understood everything. Leon asked if the polluted soil and the expansion of the gate are a problem. We need to gather forces, and tomorrow, at the end of the raid of all sorts of trifles, the king will act in person. Hari looked at him with a smile on her face and asked if this was true. Leon looked at the gate with a serious expression and said that before that, the king of another country has no right to arbitrarily conduct military operations on foreign territory. First, you need to get permission from their king. Hari looked at him with bewilderment and said that everything is fine. Leon, with a serious expression, said that there is a legal process and rules for everything. How can you call yourself a noble knight if you do not follow the laws containing the authority of the state? You need to hurry to send a report to their king. Yang Wang, with beads of sweat on his face, opened his mouth and thought that this idiot seemed even worse than himself. In the end, they called the president flying on the plane and reported what was happening. After some time, Hari with bewilderment turned to His Majesty with a request to listen to her. Leon turned his head towards her with a serious expression and told her to speak. Hari, holding a straw doll in her hands, said that everything he asked for had already been prepared. Where was he even going to use it? Leon, remaining in the same pose, said that the valuable land was polluted and the soil needed to be cleaned. She asked in confusion, was he going to do this with a straw doll? Leon asked for only two things, including a straw doll. He crossed his arms, looked out from behind the wall and asked Hari, were these the people who made the doll? She, with a smile on her face, said that this was exactly the case. A straw doll must be made by a woman who had experience in childbirth. Leon, with a serious expression, entered the room to the women and said that this was excellent. Now each one must show the doll she made. So the doll competition was held in the middle of the plain. He took one of the dolls in his hand with a displeased look and loudly asked the woman who made it, does she think that such a metaphysical monster can be called a doll? Leon tore the doll and said that it was a failure. He tore a lot of dolls and loudly said that it was a shame. So many dolls turned into dust. What caught Leon's eye was an 80-year-old elderly woman. He looked in surprise at the doll she made and loudly said that it was amazing. Leon, with beads of sweat on his face, took her hand and asked the lady how many children she gave birth to. She, with a wide smile on her face, said that 12. He, remaining in the same pose, loudly said that this is truly a real example of patriotism. In a normal situation, he would personally send her a knight with a medal and a gift. However, due to this situation, he cannot do this and asks her to forgive him. After some time in the field, Leon puts the doll on a wooden table on which there is a candle. He looked at his hand in surprise, around which a magical blue disc appeared, and said that the conditions were met. Leon placed the bowl on the table and said that she is the mother of the fertile land. The people of this land offer her a harvest doll. Yang Wang watches this with bewilderment. Leon calmly extended his hand to the bowl and asked her to accept it. A golden ray from the sky hits the bowl, causing it to begin to fill with water. Hari, with beads of sweat on her face, brought her hand to her chin and thought that the bowl itself was filling with water. The sun rises, the red light colors the clouds, a repeating day is about to begin. However, the sun that rises today will be a special beginning for the entire world. Yang Wang, with confusion on his face, looked ahead and asked how the water drops penetrate the doll. Now the doll is standing on two legs. Demira entered the doll's body and called out to her child, Lionheart. Leon bowed his head with a calm expression and greeted the mother of the earth, the goddess of life and fertility, Demira. She said with a smile on her face that they had not seen each other for a long time. A deity had descended to this land. Demira, remaining in the same pose, said that this new land was also being invaded by demons and the soil here was very polluted. Leon agreed with her with a serious expression and said that this land was not without evil, there was not even a deity here. He looked away to Yin Wang and said that he was afraid that dirty low-grade freaks were polluting the goddess's gaze. Demira looked ahead with a smile on her face and said that ignorance and greed could not be called sins. This is what is called mortal life. What does Leon think he will do next? He closed his eyes and said that the ineptitude that roams among the swordsmen may become famous, but the right to rule is sacredly enshrined in law. Leon opens his eyes and placing his hand on his chest says that he will make sure that duty and power are on equal terms here. He will teach the ignorant and lead them along the righteous path until a new pantheon is built on this land. Demira's image burst out of the doll and she asked her child if he hadn't asked her for something. That they are always ready. Leon kneels and turns to dear Demira and says that the free people on this land are suffering from evil energy. Perhaps this is not her duty, but he asks her to heal and cleanse this land. Demira, with a smile on her face, pointed at him with her hand and said that he is her priest, their champion. The land of this world is not part of her body, he must spread her deity, and replace this arid land with her body. Then everything on this earth will become his support. Demera stretched out her hand with a drop of water flowing forward. The drop, surrounded by yellow light, falls to the ground, causing a powerful beam from the sky to hit this place. People with beads of sweat on their faces watch this. Leon turned to them with a menacing look and said loudly that they must see and feel this. Fools who know nothing and have not studied anything. Life is brought into the withered field and it blooms. Leon, with a serious look, spread his arms to the sides and said that this world will move together with the deity. People need to be fruitful and multiply. This is the duty of those who are given life, like this fertile land, being proof of the eternal promise. Yamwang, with beads of sweat on his face, tore off the stalks of wheat, and squeezing them in his fist loudly told the guys so that they would not be deceived. Crops grown by magic are poison, they should know this. Leon looked at him with an angry expression and said that this was the harvest that was blessed by the deity. How dare he judge it as poison? Yamwang remained in the same pose and said that it was just a straw doll. Leon said that ignorance was forgiven only once, he had no right to desecrate the goddess with his worthless tongue. Yamwang looked at him with beads of sweat on his face and sighed in horror. He thought that this was very bad and could not be done. Because of one survivor, all his plans would be ruined. Yamwang, with an enraged look, thought that he could not leave it like this. He needed to tear off this impudent mask of lies. However, first they had to check. He hoped for his cooperation, for the sake of the safety of the people who would eat this harvest. He would reveal what a fraud Leon was. Yamwang pointed his hand at the man with a serious expression and said that an appraiser would be nominated from their side. The appraiser put on his gloves and said that he would begin then. He stretched his hand forward, causing a ball of magical energy to appear in his palm. The appraiser, with a drop of sweat on his face, looked at the system window, which notified that this was blessed seed rice. The level of this was rare. The rice was blessed by the divine power of the goddess Demera, the goddess of life and fertility. Third-stage diseases were improved. With constant use, there was a high probability of healing. The appraiser, with a surprised face, said loudly that the appraisal result was rare. Each of these stocks was rare. Moreover, it could cure third-stage diseases and even cancer. Hari, with a surprised face, picked up the stalks of wheat and asked, "Is this true?" Chinsa looked forward with a serious expression and said that someone needed to go to the local manager's house and bring a cauldron. After some time, a cauldron was standing on the ground in which rice was being cooked. Chinsu, with a surprised face, tasted the rice and said that this couldn't be. He looks at the system window, which notifies that the recovery of stamina and strength increases by 100 every minute. The recovery speed of mana increases by 50 every minute. The duration is only 8 hours. Jinsu continues to eat rice with a serious expression and says that this is the level of tonic. What food can compare to a tonic that costs 3 million won? Hari runs towards him with beads of sweat on her face and loudly calls out to the leader, saying that this is simply amazing. Jinsu looks at her with a displeased expression and says that she should finish everything first and only then speak. She swallows the food with a red face and asks that she is curious to know if he has ever eaten bugs grown in rice fields. Jinsu looks at her with beads of sweat on his face and asks if she really wants to know if he has eaten bugs. Hari looks at him and loudly says that she ate it and received buffs. Chinsa thought with a worried expression, if this blessing spreads to the entire surrounding area, then can it be called a free booster? It is nothing special that except for the seed rice, all the living creatures here were blessed. The hunters with beads of sweat on their faces loudly say that they need to catch at least one. With a full buff, they will enter the gate. The morale of the Hunter Association's strategic team has increased. Demera turns to her child. Leon looked at her with a serious expression. She said that it seems that her role is over here. It seems that she should slowly go back. He knelt down with his hand on his chest and said that he always thinks about and cherishes the blessing given by the Mother of the Earth. Demera's appearance extended her hand to his head and asked her child to let her scold him one last time. She crossed her arms with a smile on her face and said that he should never go hungry no matter where he goes. The straw doll falls onto the wooden table. Hari turned to His Majesty and said that was all. Before she could finish speaking, Leon interrupted her and asked, "Is there no deity in this world?" She said with a drop of sweat on her face that she was not sure about that. He looked ahead with a serious expression and said that a righteous life and peace is harmony with the deity. They, the people, should listen to this carefully. Now the soldiers are full and it is possible to enter the gate. The man from the Phoenix Guild called out to Yin Wang with a calm face and asked if he was okay. If this continues, their plan will be ruined. He looked ahead with an enraged expression and said that this is all because of the damned survivor. Where did that idiot come from anyway? If it weren't for him, the government, which had suffered great damage, was left in a hopeless situation and would have satisfied their request. It would have been better if he had died outside the gate. Yanwan put his hand on his chin with a wicked smile on his face and said with a laugh that it wasn't a bad idea. The man from the Phoenix Guild looked at him with a calm expression and asked the leader if everything was okay. Yanwan remained in the same pose and said that there was no need to worry. After all, the last time they attacked the gate was to close it. The man from the Phoenix Guild looked ahead with a drop of sweat on his face and said that it was true, although their condition worsened in the middle. Yanwan looked ahead with a wide smile on his face and asked, "Is there only one reincarnation? That survivor may have a blessing, but he's most likely a nobody during a fight. In that case, those idiots will definitely be defeated. What's inside can't be destroyed by normal means because they are monsters. The system window notifies that a dungeon breakthrough has begun. The sentence is death. The time limit for all creatures inside the gate begins. After a while, they enter a gate." Leon looked ahead with a serious expression and said that most gates will close if they complete the quest or defeat the boss. He likes to fight the boss one-on-one. Hari, with beads of sweat on her face, couldn't say that they usually do it in a group. He looked closely at the skeleton under his feet and said that he heard that those plebeians have tried clearing dungeons before. But it seems like there are a lot more monsters. Hari said that this dungeon has that special feature. She stretched her arms forward and looked at him and said that usually in a gate, the number of monsters decreases as the number of monsters defeated decreases. Skeletons or zombies, or even demons in special cases, as long as the boss monster is alive, they will endlessly respawn. Leon crossed his arms with a serious expression and looked ahead and said that that was interesting. That means it will only end if they defeat the boss. He understands that. Then this must be one of those dungeons. Hari walked forward with a smile on her face and said that there is a high probability that this is the case. Perhaps it is a necromancer controlling the skeletons. She looked at the system window with a drop of sweat on her face, which notifies that the dungeon breakthrough has begun. All living beings within the gate will now have a time limit. The commander Knight Dullahan is advancing with his army. They need to defeat the commander. The remaining time is 3 hours. All the people inside the gate are enveloped in intense horror. Jinsu looked at Dullahan with beads of sweat on his face and said loudly that Yanwan is an idiot. He should have warned them about this. The skeleton army is moving forward with the intention of attacking, and the system window notifies that the commander of the Dullahan Knight needs to be defeated. The remaining time is 2 hours and 58 minutes. The people from the Hunter Association with beads of sweat on their faces say that there are a lot of enemies. One of them asked the leader if he should hand out potions. Jinsu, remaining in the same pose, said that it should be divided as much as possible. He asked Man Shik how many archers and mages are there? Shik, with beads of sweat on his face and a green aura in his eye, said loudly that there are 30 archers and 2 mages here right now. Jinsu gritted his teeth holding a shield in front of him and said that those with a sniper skill need to deal with the distant enemies. And those with a shield need to stop their advance. He, remaining in the same pose, looked at the huge number of skeletons and said loudly that these idiots are finished. One of the skeletons strikes with his sword, but Jinsu manages to block it with his shield. He looked at the skeletons with beads of sweat on his face and thought, are they stronger than he thought? It seems like the orange gates are really different. However, they are not too strong for a B-rank tank like him. Jinsu swings his hammer and strikes the skeleton. He looked at his back in confusion, which is shrouded in a blue aura, and wondered how simple skeletons can have advanced spells of such a rank. 2 skeleton mages raised their hands shrouded in a blue aura to the magic circle. Jinsu took a step forward with a serious look and thought that he should get their attention. He is here, they need to get to him. The skeleton mage swings his hand, which contains a round magic sphere, and throws it at him. The magic sphere explodes and someone calls out to the leader. Jinsu looked forward with a battered look holding a shield in his hand and said that he was fine. It was just a small scratch. They should know that this equipment was very expensive. He looked at Dullahan with a serious look holding a hammer in his hand and thought that the boss was standing in front of him. He slashed with his sword very quickly, causing Jinsu's body to fly back, leaving a blue energy trail behind him. He lay on the ground with his head down while coughing. Hari watches this with a drop of sweat on her face and loudly calls out to the leader. The girl from the Hunter Association turned to Hari's deputy with a serious look and loudly said that they should go save him. Maybe they should bring in a backup force. Hari looked at the people fighting Dullahan and thought that this is what the backup force is for, they should help them now. She turned her gaze to Leon and thought that even if he was King Lionheart who defeated the great demon. Hari didn't finish her thought and loudly addressed His Majesty and said that he should help them. Leon looked at her with disdain and said that the king shouldn't participate in such a small battle. She asked with a puzzled expression what he meant. He remained in the same pose and said that they should look for ways to strengthen their honor. He couldn't believe that she was trying to force him to fight with such damn bones. This was also rude to the goddess. He even felt disgusted to look at it. Hari wondered with confusion why he was saying that. The girl from the Hunter Association looked down with a sad expression and asked her what they should do. Hari looked forward with a serious expression and thought that she had no time to waste. This man had no intention of helping. It seemed that he didn't care about anything except Dullahan. They had to stop him first. Hari took out her sword and loudly told everyone else to support the leader and their comrades. She runs very fast into the crowd of skeletons, and pushing off the skull of one of them, jumps towards Dullahan. Hari swings her sword and strikes, which he manages to block with his weapon. She thought with beads of sweat on her face that he blocked it. She must do everything possible to separate him from the rest. Dullahan throws his head into the air and swings his hand with the intention of striking. Hari looked at this with a puzzled face and thought that he threw his head up to block her view. What kind of undead fights like this? Dullahan hits with his strike, causing her body to fly off and hit the ground. Hari with a battered look thought that this was even for the best. She managed to separate him from the rest. Hari swung her sword, looked at Dullahan, who was standing in front of her, and loudly said that the range of her skills is very large. Everything around catches fire with a powerful fire, causing Dullahan to scream loudly and strike the air. Hari with a serious look swung her sword shrouded in flames and thought that she did it. At least this time she will succeed. She struck a powerful blow at Dullahan, but he managed to block it. Hari with a puzzled expression thought how he was able to block the blow with the blunt side of the sword. She with beads of sweat on her face quickly ran forward looking at him and thought about his stance. Dullahan strikes a powerful blow that leaves a blue trail behind him, but Hari manages to duck and dodge the blow. Leon with a calm look looked at this and clapping his hands loudly said that this is wonderful. Dullahan wields a sword so amazingly, despite only having one hand. Leon is sure that he used to be a noble knight and apologizes. It's hard to even think that he could mistake such a great knight as Dullahan for a simple undead. He loudly addressed the nameless knight and said that he is King Lionheart, and he gives him the right to challenge him to a duel. There is no need to hurt the soldiers, right? We need to end this fight with an honorable duel between two knights. Jinsu and Hari think that he challenged the boss to a duel. This can't be. Dullahan holds his head in his hand, looking forward. It worked. Leon looked at Dullahan with a serious expression and crossed his arms, saying that he is definitely an honorable knight. He took out his sword from the magic circle and told him that he can put his head aside. His fencing requires the use of two hands. They will not be able to truly fight if Dullahan fights with one hand. Hari walked up to Leon and turned to His Majesty, saying that if his head is not cut off, he will not die. He looked at her with a calm expression and asked, "Is it that important?" Hari with beads of sweat on her face said that it was very important. How can he defeat Dullahan if he doesn't cut off his head? Leon, remaining in the same pose, said that he doesn't care. The honor of a knight determines the outcome of the battle. He looked at Dullahan with a serious expression, holding his sword in his hands. And said that he was the first knight of Erin, the goddess of light and justice, the great Duke of Dragonia, the lion-hearted, challenging the noble knight. But Leon manages to block the blow with one hand. He calmly leaned his sword against his neck, from which blue flames come out, and said that he caught it for the first time. Dullahan rises up and holding his sword with both hands powerfully swings it, leaving a yellow mark behind the blow. Hari looked at this with beads of sweat on her face and called out loudly to His Majesty, thinking that he wouldn't be able to block such a powerful blow. Leon with a serious expression told Dullahan that he was standing unsteadily and he blocked his blow very quickly, and Jinsu with a worried expression asked if they saw how he did it. The guy from the Hunter Association with beads of sweat on his face asked if he wasn't hit by the blow. Jinsu looked at Hari with a puzzled expression and asked if she just saw what happened. She with a smile on her face put her hands in front of her and said loudly that it was amazing. Hari was literally the only one who understood what happened. She thought that the moment the sword touched, he spun his sword and changed his center of gravity. In addition, he performed a lateral movement. She wouldn't even have the courage to try it. Leon, with a calm expression, leaned his sword against his head and said that he caught it a second time. He needed to get up and take his position again. Dullahan thought that this skill was only possible because he possessed such a terrifying power. How long ago was it, when he was treated like a knight and challenged to a duel? He strikes Leon, which he manages to block, and continues to think that this is most likely a trick to overcome difficulties. Anyone would think so if they heard the suggestion to dismount from their horse. Dullahan swung his sword and thought that this was completely absurd. You have to look at Leon. The appearance and his stance are like those of a veteran who has been on countless battlefields. Sparkling eyes that chase honor and glory. Leon looked forward with a serious expression and said that he will take this blow with his sword. He parried his attack and, while striking back, said that he caught him for the third time. Will he attack again? Dullahan thought that he was the pinnacle of honor that all knights desired, the king of knights, who could be looked up to and challenged. Dullahan began to quickly run forward with the intention of attacking and thought that he did not want to use the magic he had as a necromancer. Since he was a knight, he would cross swords without any magic. He wanted to cross swords with Leon again and again. In that life that Dullahan had forgotten, wandering the world as a noble knight and fighting glorious knights. He struck at him, but Leon managed to reflect it, causing Dullahan's sword to fly to the side and fall to the ground. He held the sword in his hand and said that he had caught it 10 times, his swordplay becoming more and more sophisticated. Did his memories of when he was alive return to him? Dullahan looked at him and thought that this noble knight had returned to him, a fallen spirit, the glorious days of the past. Leon remained in the same pose and turned to the knight and asked if he intended to continue. One of the skeletons held Dullahan's head in his hands and gave it to him. He held his head and thought, how much time had been wasted on slaughter, how many times had the battles been repeated without a drop of honor. If this damned journey could end like this, then there was no greater happiness than this. Dullahan knelt down and held out his head to Leon. He looked at it with a smile on his face and said that this was excellent. He was very glad that he had restored his honor. Leon placed his hand on his head and closed his eyes and said that he would pray for him. If there was a god he believed in, then let him calm his soul. If not, then let the goddess lead him to the Garden of Eden. Leon opened his eyes with a smile on his face, looking at Dullahan, and turning to the outstanding knight said that they would meet at the feast of the gods. May the light come. Dullahan's body began to dissolve, and he wished for the glory of Leon Dragonia Lionheart. After some time, Hari and Chinsu are standing among the other workers of the association. She looked forward with a confident look and said that the promise was kept. He looked forward with a surprised look and said that it really ended in a duel. Hari, with a thoughtful look, put her hand to her chin and asked, what kind of light was that? I think he said may the light come? Chinsu turned his head towards her and asked, isn't that some kind of holy power? That's why all the undead evaporated. She, with a tired look, said that if he had such a skill, he should have used it sooner. Leon walked towards them with confidence on his face, putting his hands behind his back and asked, if so, could that noble knight meet the end as a great general? Hari looked in his direction and loudly addressed him by status. He said that a knight is a person who follows honor and glory. Honor comes from actions, and actions come from the will. If that Durakan is a noble knight, then the answer will be like this. Leon walked back with his hands behind his back and asked, now will they go for the loot? She looked in his direction with beads of sweat on her face and asked what he was talking about. He asked, if there was a battle, then shouldn't they get their loot? On the black cloth lies a magic ball with a pink aura emanating from it, and a black sword. Jinsu looked down with surprise on his face, and loudly told her to look at this ball. It is immediately clear that it has tremendous magical power. Hari looked down with a surprised look, and said loudly that the great sword and the Durahan cloak were still left. A purple ball with purple energy was lying on a soft pillow. Leon looked down with an angry look and said that this thing was ruined and should be thrown in the trash. A broken gray piece of the ball was lying on the pillow. Everyone looked at Leon standing next to the ball. He said with a dissatisfied look that such things only cause trouble. The system window notified that the final loot was the Durahan cloak, sword, and other magic stones. The Honam gate was cleared. After some time, Hari put her hand on the handle of the table with a tired face. 4 days had passed since Leon returned to Earth. A lot had happened in such a short time. She, with bruises under her eyes from lack of sleep, said that she was tired. At first, she had a little commotion because of the taxes. A few days ago, Leon asked with an irritated face, how can a king ask a foreign king to pay taxes? Hari said that even if he used magic stones to pay taxes. He interrupted her and said that kings should not count coins. How could she argue with the king about what his servants should do? She told him with a tired face to stop talking about coins. In order to establish a deity on this land, new believers were accepted. The old man asked while standing in line of people how he could pay the offering. Leon said with a serious look that it would take 19 trillion to pay a share of the harvest as a donation. How generous were they being? The old man said with a puzzled look that the taxes and living expenses were already high, and to pay 90% of the harvest as a tax. Leon crossed his arms with a smart look and asked the devotee of the goddess how dare he worry about his stomach? His guild would handle all matters such as food and accommodation, well-being and life. Hari looked at the piece of paper in her hands with a smile on her face and said that if she thought about it, it was blessed rice and was highly appreciated. The old man looked at the sheet of paper with a look of amazement on his face, which said that they were paying 150 million for 80 kilograms of rice. He said that one bag was at that price. How much would they have left if they gave up a ninth? Leon looked ahead with a confident smile on his face. It so happened that Leon's biggest problem was where he lived. He stood in the room with an angry look, crossed his arms and said loudly that this was not even a battlefield. What's the point if there are no works of art in the royal chambers? He made a request, which requires providing a room with the most luxurious bed, as well as constantly available servants and a work of art for constant enjoyment. In the end, Hari tried to rent a room in a 5-star hotel until 2 in the morning. With tears in her eyes, she stood on her knees, loudly addressing His Majesty, asking him to go to bed. She agreed to make a concession in terms of placing the paintings and ceramics that decorate the hotel, within certain conditions. That is why things are like this now. At this moment Hari raised her hand and said loudly addressing His Majesty that she had arrived. He told her to come in. She, with beads of sweat on her face, was pushing a table towards him and asking if he was feeling well. Leon, sitting on a chair in front of the panoramic window, said that he was feeling well. Hari, with a smile on her face, pushed the table towards him and looking at him, said that it was time for breakfast. He, with a thoughtful look, holding a glass of wine in his hand, asked if she had had breakfast. Hari said that she had not yet. Leon, with a calm face, brought the glass to his face and said that she should eat when she had time. She, looking tired, agreed with him. There were many delicious dishes on the table. Hari, with a smile on her face, looked at the food and thought that it looked delicious. She would eat a sandwich or something like that later. Leon, closing his eyes, looked down, putting his hand on his leg and told her to sit down. She raised her hand with red cheeks and tears in her eyes and loudly called him by his status. She wondered if he wanted to share breakfast with her. Hari folded her hands in front of her with a smile on her face and laughed while sitting at the table. Leon asked what she was doing. He looked away with an angry expression and said that he asked for the spare ribs to be cut so that they could be easily eaten. And what was she doing? She looked at him with a surprised expression and asked, so he didn't offer to eat together with her? Leon sighed with a terrified expression and said, in which country does a king and a commoner eat together? Hari looked ahead with a sad face without saying anything. After some time, the high stages were standing under a clear sky and a car pulled up to one of the buildings. Hari, sitting in the car, said that the Hunters Association had decided to provide grants and subsidies to His Majesty. Even if it was not as big as the royal palace, they would take him to a place where he could live. Leon looked out the window with a calm face and said that they were very thoughtful. He couldn't ask too much as a guest, so he trusted her with everything. She turned to him from the front seat and said to His Majesty, "What about distributing the spoils?" He closed his eyes with an angry expression and interrupted her, saying that he had told her to take care of it herself. But he liked the cloak, so she should leave it to him. Hari, with beads of sweat on her face, agreed with him. After a while, the car stopped near a tall white building. She told His Majesty that they had arrived. Hari extended her hand forward with a smile and said that the place was next to the Hunters Association. And there was a helipad on the top, so it would be convenient. She looked forward with an excited expression and asked, addressing His Majesty, "Isn't it good?" Leon agreed with her with a serious expression. He looked at the stones stacked on top of each other with a sad expression and wondered, what is this? Director Park Young-chan, from the Dujong Group, who deals with the products of the future Dujong, looked at them and asked, "Is this the deputy from the Hunters Association, Hari?" She thought with a drop of sweat on her face that today's movement was confidential. Hari asked with a serious expression, "Who is he?" Yung-chan put his hand on his chest with a smile on his face and introduced himself, saying that it was a coincidence. She asked with a smile on her face, "Is this from the Dujong Group?" Hari thought that the Dujong Group was one of the largest conglomerates in Korea, and the director of such a company was waiting for them, under the guise of a coincidence. He looked at them with a mischievous smile on his face, narrowing his eyes and making a sound. Chung-chan extended his hand to the side with a smile on his face, and said that this person was the famous survivor. Hari thought with a hurt expression that, as she thought, he already knew about their arrival. He extended his hand towards Leon with an ominous look and said that it was a pleasure to meet Leon Dragonia Lionheart. He tilted his head back with an arrogant look and looked down on Chung-chan and asked that some merchant wanted to shake hands. Hari said that this place was being given to him by the Hunter Association for 1 year. She flipped through the documents in her hands with a serious face and said that he didn't have to worry about the monthly rent and maintenance fee because the association would take care of everything. There was also room service or cleaning. It was also included in the maintenance fee so he could use it. She thought with a tense expression that it was for the best. The information about the survivors was top secret. A situation in which it was unknown why Jong-chan had decided to get close. It was a blessing for Hari that King Leon had ignored Director Jong-chan. She turned around and asked why he had come to him in the first place. Leon looked out the window and put his hand behind his back and said that there was only one thing a merchant wanted. He must be chasing profit. Hari asked with a surprised expression, "What profit?" She asked with a drop of sweat on her face, "Is it because of the rice?" "Because of the blessed rice of the Hongnam Plain." Due to the emergency situation, information was not controlled properly. An internet broadcaster took advantage of the situation and filmed the incident. Even though the association recommended deleting the video. Hari looked down at the phone in her hands with an angry expression and asked, "Did that person really post it again? Was it that farmer Mr. Park who did it?" Her phone shows a video of Leon standing in a field, and the channel that uploaded the video is called Farmer Park. At the same time, Jong-chan is holding a phone in his hand with a video of blessed rice open. He put his face on his hand with an angry look, leaning it on the table, and said loudly that it was that impudent freak. Jong-chan, with an angry face, closed his eyes and asked if he was sure that it was effective. The worker crossed his arms and said loudly that it was. Jong-chan said that they didn't even conduct clinical trials. If it worked on rats, is there a guarantee that it will work on humans? The worker scratched his cheek with his finger with a frightened look. The girl with glasses put her hands on her legs and addressed the director, said that in order to get as many seeds as possible, he found the owner of the field. However, in that place, a barely alive dog came back to life after eating rice, cured chronic inflammations and a runny nose. It is said that all the villagers were cured of minor illnesses and serious chronic diseases after eating rice. They couldn't get the clinical trial data, but these facts are like proof of the effect. Jong-chan, with a smirk on his face, crossing his arms, said that a thing is still a thing. He remembered Leon with an angry look, saying that if it weren't for that insolent freak. He thinks of him, the director of the Dejong Group, as some kind of small traitor? The girl with glasses said with a serious look that they should get to him. The power of that rice is simply limitless. He said with a tense look. That he also knows this, they should meet again. Jong-chan with great force hit the table with his hand and asked, "How dare he look down on him?" He said with fury on his face, leaning his hands on the table, that Leon thinks he is the center of the universe because of one rice. He met the wrong opponent. Jong-chan with a smile on his face said that he is the same as the other survivors. He thinks that the world he lived in is the best. The one who came from some ancient civilization. He said with a wicked smile on his face, holding the phone in his hand, that he would give him a real shock. Leon, who had returned to Earth, set 3 goals for himself. First, spreading faith. There are many gods and followers on Earth, but there is no truly important holy power. Man must have faith in God and spread His grace. The idea that diseases and pollution of the earth are punishment is wrong. So, in order to use holy powers, it is necessary to spread a new faith. The number of followers of this faith must increase. Second, reconstructing the Holy Grail Knights. There is no fighting unit in this world that uses holy powers. If the guardian of the Holy Grail, Lionheart, is a demigod, then the Holy Grail Knights are the living saints who rank just below him. They are the knights of the gods, using the sacred laws, as well as the fear of all demons. The last third, to eradicate all evil in this land, spread faith, restore divinity, train the Holy Grail Knights according to the established order. Among the courtiers here, It was too much to expect the appearance of holy knights who had the ability to be like the Holy Grail knights. Leon looked forward with a serious face and thought that it didn't matter to him, he just needed to do everything according to the established order. He turned around when he heard someone calling him. Hari, with a drop of sweat on her face, put her finger on her phone and said that there was someone who had requested an official audience. Leon looked at her with confidence on his face and said that since he was observing the order, he should be listened to. After some time, Chong-chan entered Leon's room. He addressed His Majesty with a serious expression and thanked him for allowing him to hold an audience. Leon raised his clenched fist in front of his face with an interested look and looked forward. Chong-chan thought with a fake smile on his face that if it was for corporate profit then it would be easy for him to bow his head to this freak. He said that he had prepared a small gift this time. His assistant placed a huge metal suitcase in front of him. Chong-chan held out his hand with a smile on his face asking him to accept it, and thought if he found out what it was he would probably be very surprised. It was a luxury product that this freak had never even dreamed of. Once he tried it he would never be able to go back to the old days. He would even ask them to deliver it to him more often. Leon agreed and said that he would accept it out of mercy. Chong-chan thought with a fake smile on his face what was wrong with him. An attitude as if he was the one receiving something from him. He placed his hand on the suitcase and asked how about checking it out. He would definitely like it. Leon leaned his face on his hand with a tired expression and pointed to the sides saying that it was too hard for him to explain etiquette to them. He asked Hari to open the suitcase. She agreed with a serious expression. Hari put her finger to the handle of the suitcase with a smile on her face. She pressed the button to open the metal suitcase with her finger. Hari looked at the suitcase doors that were opening quickly. She asked with a surprised expression, "Is this really it?" Chong-chan with a smile on his face extended his hand towards the open suitcase with weapons and said that this was the newest weapon that their company was proud of. He could choose whatever he liked. Hari looked at him with an amazed expression and asked, "Is this really a unique weapon made by craftsmen directly under the guidance of the Dojong Guild?" He turned his head to the side with an arrogant smile on his face and said that these were all high-level unique weapons. He pointed to the weapons and said that he heard that from now on he would act as a hunter. These things would be very useful to him. Hari wondered, are they really just giving them the unique weapons of the Dojong Guild? Such high-quality weapons that even money couldn't buy. When she was a cadet at the academy, she had only seen him on a video hosting site. Leon, with a menacing face, leaned his face on his hand and quickly looked forward and told him to stop. Where should he use this low-grade weapon? Chong-chan, with an angry look, asked loudly, "Why low-grade?" Hari turned her head to the side with a surprised expression and addressed His Majesty and asked, "Did he really say low-grade?" He looked at them with an arrogant expression and asked, "How can a famous sword be created if it is not bathed in the energy of the stars and if it has not received a divine blessing? Are there weapons only for hunting animals?" Chong-chan, with a puzzled expression and beads of sweat, wondered what kind of nonsense he was talking about. Does he want weapons to be dried in the sun like peppers and have prayers read over them? Leon, with a disinterested expression, sitting on a chair, said that he was inspiring mistrust. He, with a bead of sweat on his face, waving his hand loudly, said that this was a misunderstanding. Leon, with a bored expression, said that merchants always strive to promote their goods wherever possible. He, with a confident expression, raised his hand, taking out a sword from a blue portal emitting energy, and said that it was like using a knife to chop up a cow when you need to slaughter a chicken. But he can experience his gift. Chong-chan looked ahead with a surprised expression at the sword that was emitting a bright aura and wondered if the sword appeared out of thin air. Was it an old sword? He wondered with a terrified expression if he pulled out some ancient sword. He was going to despise him until the very end. Chong-chan said that if that was the case, he would also like to see the sparkle of His Majesty's precious sword. He smiled as he put his hands on his back and turned to Hari. Chong-chan asked if she could use any sword she liked. She smiled as she pointed at herself and asked if she could really do that. She turned her head towards Leon with a drop of sweat on her face. Hari confidently extended her hand towards the weapon. She put her hand on the hilt of the red sword and thought that all she had done was wait for 4 years. Hari looked at the sword in her hands with a smile on her face and thought that this was the sword of Master Park Jin-chul, Dawn. She could feel the power of this sword. Was it true that it had been tested for 10 days under the scorching sun of a special gate? She walked up to Leon with the sword in her hand and asked if she could really swing it. Leon, holding his sword in his hand, asked her if she was holding a toy in her hands. What was the point of asking adults for permission? Zhang Chan looked at them and thought that he was just a freak. She looked at the red sword in her hands with a confused look. She filled it with fiery energy. Hari raised the sword, enveloping her body in fiery energy, and loudly said that she was advancing. She confidently looked down with a red aura in her eyes and swung the sword down at high speed. Pieces of the sword flew around under the pressure of Lian's weapon. They looked at the broken sword with surprised faces. Hari, with a sad face, holding the sword handle with the remaining blade in her hands, looked forward. Lian, with a calm look, put his hand in front of him, holding the sword in it with energy, said that there was not even a trace of fire. This is a waste of time. They will shorten the audience time. In 3 minutes he must tell why he came. Chong-chan, with a frightened face, stepped back and thought, did dawn really break? This is the most powerful weapon that was developed by their company. How did this happen? This simply cannot be. He, with beads of sweat running down his face, cannot say a word. Chong-chan, bowing to him, said that they would like to obtain a patent for rice seeds. Lian, with a serious look, leaning his face on his hand, asked what he said. He, with fear on his face, raised his hand and said that of course they will pay for it. According to their management's calculations, its value is 180 billion. Chong-chan thought with a mischievous grin on his face that of course this was a low price. There was no way that the seeds that could cure cancer were only worth 180 billion. However, there was no way this fool could know the value of 180 billion. If you explained it to him, he would definitely be very surprised. He looked ahead with a calm face and asked, did they really want to buy the seeds with money? Chong-chan rubbed his palms with a mischievous grin on his face and thought that he had been caught. He said loudly that this was exactly the case. Of course, he would have to sign a contract that would help De Zhong's company distribute this rice. If he wanted, they could raise the price a little depending on the negotiations. Lian said with an angry look that he was a freak of a merchant. He asked with anger on his face, enveloped in a fiery aura, with a lion appearing above his head, how dare he blaspheme? Lian thought, how dare this damn merchant insult a deity? Chong-chan looked forward with a frightened expression and bulging veins on his face. He looked at the huge energy lion standing above him with beads of sweat on his face from fear. Lian with an angry face said that he was a fool, he showed his sin. He knelt down with fear on his face and tears falling from his eyes, leaning his shaking hands on the floor and said loudly that he really did not know what he did wrong. Lian with an unperturbed expression stretched out his hand forward dispelling the energy lion and asked how could one be so ignorant and forgetful. Chong-chan gritted his teeth, lowered his head and made a sound. Lian with a confident face said that the harvest grows from the blessed Demira land. In other words, it is a blessing bestowed by God on the farmers so that they can then plow and cultivate their fields. It is not something that can be bought with money. Tribute must be given through gratitude and subsequent faith. Lian looked at him and said that he must have decided to mislead people in pursuit of vile profit. He asked him how Zhang-chan was going to profit from the sacred offerings if he did not practice religion. He raised his hand with an angry expression and clenched his fist. After a while, Hari asked Lian, who was standing by the window, if it was okay to let Director Zhang-chan go like that. She looked at him with an upset expression, holding a bundle with a broken sword in her hand, and said that from his point of view, he may be a simple merchant, but in reality, he is a man with great influence. Lian said with a thoughtful look that it was not even worth paying attention to him. That merchant would not influence him in any way. He crossed his arms and turned his head towards her and asked if what he told her was ready. Hari said that the association had contacted her. She said with a smile on her face that this time, His Majesty would also be tested. In terms of procedure, passing the measurement tests will make his job easier. He asked with a puzzled face, what kind of nonsense is this? Are they really going to test the Lionheart King? Hari asked with a puzzled look, then why did he ask to go there? Lian, with a confident face, crossed his arms, looked to the side and said that he needed to find some useful warriors and he would test them. She, with a puzzled look on her face, clutching a bundle in her hands, said that this was a procedure. Lian interrupted her and said that if it didn't work out, then she should make it so that it was possible. Hari, with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face, looked ahead.
Today's video ends here. Comment next if you want the next chapter. Like, share, and subscribe for more recaps. Full video available on the channel.